All right, guys. Here's my exam review for fall 24 human resource management. Get started. So first off, there were six chapters we covered so far. Chapter one, two, three, four, five, six. Uh, since the first class that I usually teach, it was a bit of a review class. We didn't really dive into the chapter too much. I'm not going to ask any questions on that. I'm going to be more focusing on chapter two through chapter six. So job analysis all the way through employee selection. These are only the topics we've covered so far. So let's jump into some of the questions. I'm taking up last term's midterm. The midterm is entirely multiple choice, consistent with last year's midterm, as well as your midterm, is entirely multiple choice. So you should get a good understanding as to what you can expect. Okay, so let's go. So in this review, I've organized things by chapter. So I have questions by chapter. In your exam, these questions are going to be all over the place. So you can't just say, hey, the next 10 questions are job analysis questions. All right, so here we go. So what does the term KSA stand for in job analysis? So job analysis is typically associated with uh, collecting information about a job. What type of information you're collecting is generally related to KSA. So you can almost think about it just by thinking about applying that. Okay, when I'm collecting information about people in the job, in order to perform the job, you need to have KSA. Is it key strategic? No, right? Knowledge, strategy, maybe knowledge, maybe no. Key skill assessment. No, you're not testing people. Knowledge set. No. So, you can almost do, as I take up this exam, I kind of give you tips in terms of like how you can approach your own exam. So as you're going through it and you're like, it's not this, it's not this, maybe it's this bottom one. So you're in between the two. And then you can like flip a coin and then you get a 50-50 shot at getting it right rather than like 20%, like one in five, right? Um, the next piece is 9, to gather detailed information about the task performed by employees. Which method would be most effective? Okay. So again, it doesn't say job analysis, but the way you're reading it, you're like, okay, job analysis. Okay. So I'm thinking of all the different ways to collect information via job analysis. So in class, we talked about surveys, we talked about observing people. We didn't really talk about reviewing job descriptions. That comes after. Analyzing performance appraisals, we didn't talk about that. Conducting job evaluation, no, that's related to something else. So right there, if you can figure out, review the stem of the question, here's the stem, and you apply it to what we talked about in class, you can immediately drill it down to 50-50 here, okay? So employee surveys versus observing employees. So if you're trying to get information about what the tasks that people performed as or were, asking people in a survey, surveys are more for like general information, like, rating of how engaged are you, how satisfied are you. They're not about like the rich, like nuanced content as to what somebody's doing. So you got to observe them. Okay. So here's a set of what I refer to as kind of like standard multiple choice questions. At the end of the exam, I always include, for each of those 5 chapters we're covering, I always include one of these style questions where there's like a mini case at the top, and then there's 3 subsequent questions. So here's 2. I got a third one on the next page. Let's go through it. Okay. So Green Tech Solutions, a sustainable energy company, transitioned Sarah, so Sarah's the person, a project manager, from an in-person to a remote work during COVID, during the pandemic. Okay. Pre-transition, her role was divided or involved daily on-site meetings. So here are the tasks that you were doing pre-COVID. Underlying this stuff, you might need it later. Post-transition, she began using video conferencing for meetings, project management, software tasking. Okay, schools to communicate with her team. So slightly different stuff. After, she faced challenges in maintaining the same level of engagement and oversight, but adapted by implementing regular virtual check-ins. So this is how you adapted due to the challenges faced by the transition of job analysis performed on the project manager role. Okay, good. You got all this content. You're doing a job analysis. This question explicitly says job analysis. So you know right there it is. All right, so let's see what the questions are that relate back to this case. What is the most appropriate method for analyzing the project manager role in this context? Okay, so here, again, what forms of data collection do we have? Diaries, questionnaires, recordings, observation. We didn't talk about peer reviews, okay? So that's unlikely to be the answer. And if we go circle back, okay, I don't know. It's been a while since I got this question, so I don't know the correct answer, but I'll walk you through my methodology that I would go to. Okay, for analyzing the project manager role in this context, so it's virtual. So video recordings, possibly. Task diary logs, virtual check-ins, project management software, so her pre-roll, we don't really care about the pre-roll, the pre-pandemic. It's the post-pandemic that we care about, I believe, in this context, in this transitioning context. Okay. Well, let's see. Task and diary logs, task logs and diaries. Well, let's see. Perhaps we removed peer reviews because they weren't one of the main ones we talked about. The questionnaires could be too basic. The video recordings is certainly a possibility. On-site observation, since people are all remote, that doesn't really make sense. Video recordings could be a possibility. Let me just make an argument for why not those. Perhaps the manager's role goes beyond just what's taking place on the videos. And as a result, you need to really capture their role throughout the entire day, not just when they're on video calls. Okay. Which of the following best describes, or I can't read this one. Which of the following is the best practice for conducting job analysis interviews in this context? Okay, so conducting in-person interviews, unlikely, everything's virtual. Using asynchronous communication tools. Asynchronous means you send them an email and they respond to you at a later time. That's unlikely. Scheduling interviews during off hours. Using video conferencing tools, that makes sense. Sending detailed email questionnaires is kind of similar to this asynchronous idea. So here, based on this, I think the only one that really kind of makes sense and is obvious is using using Teams or Zoom or, older back in the day, we used Skype. In this context, which aspect of job analysis is particularly crucial for ensuring effective performance management of the project manager role? Okay, so we're trying to evaluate the performance of somebody. Okay. Okay, so in this case, so we haven't talked about in detail performance management, evaluating people. Okay, so that comes after the midterm. So we can't spend too much time thinking about that. Instead, we're trying to look more specifically at which aspect of the job analysis. So when we're looking at the job analysis, there's a particular process that unfolds. And one of the steps in the process is about developing a job description. Okay. So the job description is one piece, right? That's quite possible. The job title is one thing that comes up in the job description, but not there. Let me bounce down here. The benefits package, we're not going to evaluate a manager based on the benefits. Regular team meeting activities would probably be inside the job description as well. Doesn't really allow you to evaluate the manager, so that doesn't really make sense. However, a clear definition of deliverables and deadlines, when you're evaluating somebody, this would go inside the job description. Okay, what's expected when it's expected. However, it's more specific and more precise in terms of how you're actually going to evaluate somebody. Because in a detailed job description, it says about like what somebody should be doing, great, but it doesn't say when it has to be done by, what level. Right, so it's the deliverables is really the big piece here that we're focusing on. Okay. Good. HR planning. Okay, so again, we're going to the next chapter. These are like the standard multiple choice questions first. Your question is experiencing rapid growth and needs to hire 50 new employees within 3 months. So things are doing well and we're growing. Which HR planning strategy would be most effective? So we need to hire, in my opinion, a bunch of employees quickly. Okay, so again, think of that bathtub. You know, HR planning is like a bathtub. We're trying to increase the amount of water in the tub. You plug the drain, open the tap, trying to bring people in. Okay, so let's figure out which of these ideas are associated with filling that bathtub. Outsourcing the recruitment process, yes. So that's using somebody outside of the organization to bring people in. Implementing an employee referral program, yes, that makes sense as well. Conducting walk-in interviews, it does make sense, but to be honest, they're so rare that these actually occur. Increasing social media advertisements, offering signing bonuses. You know, these are all, to be honest, these are all methods that could be used to increase the number of people in the tub. So I didn't throw any ones that are associated with, like, I don't know, firing people, terminating layoffs, what's the term? Hiring freeze, attrition. Those would have been ones that I could have thrown out to suggest the water is decreasing in the tub or the number of employees are decreasing in the tub. So I made this question actually more difficult. Sorry, I popped it up there. I made this question actually more difficult because I only put in options that were associated with bringing in new people. Now, how you differentiate is really the size of the magnitude. We're trying to bring in a bunch of new employees at the same time. We don't really have the context of whether this is a big organization or not. However, given the fact that this seems like a high number of employees really quickly, it would take a huge amount of effort to bring in that many people at the same time. Okay? Relying on referrals is unlikely to bring in, you know, because if we're going to hire 50 people, you probably need to interview like 200 people, 300 people within a 3-month time period. You have to find them, you know, so social media advertisements that helps find people, but like they take so much, it takes so much longer. If you really want to get things done in a hurry, outsourcing is the way to go. Okay, 16. An organization wants to ensure it has the right mix of skills for future projects. Which HR planning tool would it use? Okay, so here the trick or the key, you want to make sure that you have the right mix. Okay, the skills for future projects. Okay, so this is basically saying it's all about like the demand side of things. So demand in the future, and you want to make sure you have them. Okay. So future projects, okay, is saying what's coming up, but you want to make sure you have them. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have the supply for this upcoming demand. Okay, so job analysis is a preliminary step for most things, but it wouldn't really capture it here. A skills inventory is, think of it like remember, it's like a database of all the employees you currently have in the organization and their skill sets or education or competencies. So that would make sure that would tell you how many employees you currently have the right mix. Performance appraisal just says whether somebody's good or bad. It doesn't say anything about the mix of their skills. Employee surveys, no. Perhaps an employee survey could contribute to a skills inventory, but it doesn't explicitly say that, so ignore that. Workforce forecasting. Forecasting is more about like the demand, learning more about the demand side of things rather than what you currently have. Okay, so skills. Okay, again, here's the mini case associated with this chapter content of HR planning. So Innovatech Solutions, a cutting-edge tech company known for its pioneering artificial intelligence products. It's facing intense competition from emerging startups, and established industry giants. Okay, so it's competition from everybody. Okay? Kind of irrelevant. We haven't really gotten into any of like the core of this yet. The company is losing its highly specialized workers to competitors. That seems like an important one. So turnover, who are suspected to be offering more attractive compensation packages. That's why you're losing them, or advanced career opportunities. Okay, so people are leaving because they're getting more money and more promotions. This talent drain is impacting your timelines and threatening markets. So you're losing people to competitors is how I read this first one. Okay, To address the high turnover, what HR planning tool should be used? Okay, so exit interviews are when somebody leaves, gives you an indication as to why they're leaving. So they probably give you they probably tell you about the compensation packages or career opportunities. And they would tell you about that during the exit interview to entice you to keep them by offering or matching or something along those lines. What HR planning tool? Okay, so another hint is what HR planning tool. So exit interviews is something that comes up with regards to turnover, but we didn't really refer to it as a tool, so that's unlikely to be it. Job analysis, no. Performance appraisal is not one either. Workforce forecasting, skills inventory. Oh my God, I would have got this wrong. So workforce forecasting is about the demand. So I guess that doesn't really talk about turnover rates. Skills inventory is about the inventory of skills that people currently have. I guess I did say that this could be helpful when people are leaving to tell you why they're going. So I guess that makes sense as to why that's the right answer. Innovatech Solutions anticipates a future shortage of IT specialists. What internal measures should it take as part of HR planning? Anticipates future shortages of IT specialists. Okay, so in the bathtub, water is low. What internal measures should it take as part of the HR planning? So outsourcing IT functions that would help. Offshoring. So it's trying to, I think what it's saying. What internal measures should it take if anticipates future shortage of IT specialists? So it sounds like if there's a shortage, a labor shortage, you want to increase the amount of water in the tub. Okay. If there's an oversupply, you decrease the water in the tub. If there's a shortage, you want to increase the water in the tub to a shortage of specialists to meet the demand. So we're trying to figure out how can we get more IT specialists. Outsourcing works. Job sharing is all about decreasing. Developing competitive compensations, that's about the idea of retaining. So that works. Hiring temporary, reducing the scope is probably not it. Reducing the scope, that's a decreasing as well. So we took off two just by thinking about this a little further. Anticipates a future shortage. What internal measures should it take as part of the HR planning process? So let's see, what internal measures would you take? Well, I guess technically outsourcing and hiring temp are both external. So let's see if my logic is correct. There we go. That's good. So internal measures is you're trying to retain people more. Okay, these bring in more horsepower, IT specialists, but they're not necessarily internal because they're external measures. Okay, in response to losing specialized tech workers to competitors, Innovatech Solutions has noticed a labor surplus in some jobs, but a labor shortage in others. Ooh, here we go. So this is the case where the tub is low in some and overflowing in others. So in that case, it's just you want to go higher here and lower here. Okay. What HR planning strategy could be used to address these surpluses? So if it's possible to bring people from one job to another, let's see if anything fits with that theoretical perspective. Implementing a strict attendance policy to ensure productivity. Yeah, there we go. Show up to work. You know, sometimes when you tell people what to do, that actually leads to them not doing this. Offering additional vacation days as an incentive to stay. I don't think that has anything to do with putting people in pubs. Creating a cross-functional project to foster collaboration and skill development. Hey, there we go. That makes sense. So cross-functional collaboration, increasing the, you're telling people they're doing good or bad, restructuring hierarchy. Okay, so based on this logic, there we go. Okay, so it's all about this idea of, one's going up, one's going, if you want the number of people with certain skills to go up in one category, down in another category, create cross-functional teams, collaboration. Perhaps when you educate people horizontally about different skills that they might have, they might be able to compensate for skill gaps in an organization. Legal requirements, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's see what we got for this chapter. An organization wants to improve its diversity and inclusion efforts. Which of the following strategies would be most effective? Yeah, you want to increase diversity and inclusion. Mandating diversity training, potentially increasing, potentially and establishing employee resource groups. Yeah, potentially reviewing updating company policies. I actually think it could be all of them. Yeah, there we go. The only one that threw me off a little bit, establishing employee resource groups. So a resource group could be this word resources throwing me off. Establishing employee groups in an organization like clubs, groups, like a big one. If it's a small organization, you probably don't have enough segments or pockets of employees to form groups, but in large organizations, you can certainly form groups that gives people a sense of, it's not the idea that, like from a diversity perspective, but it certainly contributes to the idea of inclusion because you feel like you're a part of the team. They might, a group, you could have like teams, inter-organizational sports competitions, right? Like teams and things like that. So if you're establishing groups or teams, that contributes to this inclusion idea. All right. Which type of discrimination occurs when an employer's policies and practices disproportionately advertise to a protected group? Regardless of the intent. Okay, so this is discrimination. So we're talking about. Okay. So let's just do it. Disparate treatment. No, we didn't really talk about that in class. Direct discrimination. So direct discrimination is when a manager or somebody kind of intentionally discriminates against you. In this case, it's not the employer discriminating, it's their practices. Okay, so it's close, but this word direct throws you off. Disparate impact. I think I made that word up. Systemic discrimination is the answer. And reverse discrimination. Reverse discrimination refers to the idea that, let's just say, an organization has discriminated against one population for so long. So say I've discriminated against the organization that I work for has discriminated against women for so long. Reverse discrimination is the idea that I'm going to discriminate against men in the future to kind of like a level set. That's not what the question referred to. Okay, fashion trend. A popular retail store specializing in clothing and accessories employs a diverse workforce to cater to its wide customer base. Recently, the store introduced a new uniform policy. Let's see where this is going. Requiring all employees to wear company branded attire. We talked about this in class for sure. However, one employee who practices a religious faith that requires modest attire, requires to wear modest attire. I think there's a whole couple of words in there I missed. Expresses concern about the uniform's capability with their religious beliefs. Okay. Fashion trends HR department must navigate the balance between adhering to company policies and accommodating the employees' religious practices while maintaining a fair and inclusive workplace environment. Okay, so we talked about this in class. We pretty much talked about this exact example in class when we had a scenario about should restaurants and bars be allowed to force female employees to wear provocative clothing. Yeah. So in the scenario described above, what legal concept is implicated by the employee's request for accommodation? Okay, so in this case, there was two, I mentioned in class, I have two favorite concepts that I talk about. And one was bona fide occupational requirement, and two was reasonable accommodation. Okay. In this case, the word accommodation here should trigger you to look for it. You don't see it. Well, then there's probably another one, the other one, which which jumps out at you. So a bona fide occupational requirement refers to the idea that you're legally allowed to discriminate against somebody or a group of people based on a legitimate business need. Okay? So if there is a legitimate business need associated with the company policy or, I guess in this case, a company branded attire, it doesn't really say anything about being provocative or anything along those lines. So it would kind of suggest that it's aligned to a legitimate business need. Well, it's certainly not discrimination. It's certainly not equal pay for equal rights. It's certainly not employment equity, and certainly not harassment. So that's the only possible question or possible answer. I should say that a better link to the question would have been if I emphasized the notion that the uniform allowed for, was related to a legitimate task or activity that the employee had to do. That would have been a better, if I wanted to write this question better, that's what I would have done. Which action by fashion translator would constitute a reasonable accommodation for the employee's religious beliefs? You see what I did here. Again, I told you I love these concepts, okay? So in this one, in the first question, I link it to the bona fide occupational requirement. Now I'm transitioning to the idea of reasonable accommodation, okay? So which action would constitute a reasonable accommodation for the employee's religious beliefs? So reasonable accommodation is the idea that employers are expected to accommodate the employee's needs up until undue financial hardship. Okay, so this is, how do you accommodate? How does the organization accommodate this individual? Terminating the employee? No. Modifying the uniform? Sounds like a reasonable accommodation. Continuing to pay but not allowing the employee to work. What's kind of nice is you're being paid, but the idea of not being allowed to work, that kind of hurts you in terms of promotional opportunities. Often employ a pay raise to compensate for any discomfort. No, you're not really accommodating them. Although some people might take a little more pay. Work in a non-customer, suggesting the employee work in a non-customer facing role. That's kind of an interesting one as well. A lot of times when organizations do accommodate somebody, they might shift the location to which they are working. This last line item doesn't actually say anything about actually accommodating their concerns. So like, do they have to wear the uniform or do they not? If this last item said something about, yeah, we're going to put you in a different non-customer facing role and you don't have to wear your uniform, or we're going to allow you to work from home, and when you work from home you don't have to wear your uniform, that would be like more of a reasonable accommodation. Just saying that, hey, you don't have to interact with customers, but not acknowledging the whole concern around the uniform is really the issue. Okay, so modifying the uniform to allow for religious attire, I'm sorry, I think I probably phrased that quite poorly, but you get the idea as to what I was going at. What is the primary consideration for fashion trend when determining whether an accommodation for employees' religious beliefs is reasonable? Ooh, so this one's kind of cool. So this one's kind of like pushing how do you accommodate? And it's saying, what is the consideration, okay, for whether an accommodation for beliefs is reasonable? So when does an organization have to accommodate the employee is really what we're getting at. The employees like the service. No, we don't care how long they're working there. You still have to accommodate them whether they're new or not. The cost and impact of the accommodation on the business, 100%. It's all about the idea of undue financial hardship. The title, level of, religious dominance. I'm only going to help people that are belonging to certain religions. The availability of alternative job roles within the company. This one could actually work as well. To be honest, I think the question is more specifically talking about undue financial hardship. But this one's not a bad answer as well, because it's the idea that this one kind of ties into the undue hardship. So oftentimes we talk about reasonable accommodation in terms of cost. However, say all things cost the same. So we're talking about scheduling. I've written an old exam question about scheduling, and I compared like Walmart to like a Quickie Mart that had 4 employees. Okay. So it's the idea like, say somebody based on religion cannot work on a Sunday. Okay? A Walmart would be expected to accommodate that individual and scheduling them on different days of the week, right? Because they have 10,000 employees. It would be easy enough for them to accommodate their schedule, right? It's not putting them in any like undue hardship by any means. But if we look at so like a Quickie Mart, like from The Simpsons with like Abu, when there's like 2 or 3 employees, then they say, okay, you have to work on a Sunday. But if that one of 3 employees doesn't work on a Sunday, that means the other two, that might be really challenging to always force one of the other 2 employees to work on the Sunday. So in that case, the smaller organization might not be forced to accommodate their employees. Okay? So the availability of schedule, the availability of alternative jobs which align to, religious beliefs. In this case, I guess it's really because unless different jobs in the organization wear different uniforms, I guess this bottom one is just wrong. But I think you could probably spin it in a way to make it closer to light. Yeah, I just want to highlight that because there's nuances, right? Context matters, so just be aware of that. Recruitment, we're actually doing pretty well in terms of time. 2 more chapters. Okay, so real quick, recruitment. This is something people always mix up. So recruitment is the idea of trying to get people to apply for the job. Employee selection is once people have applied, you're selecting them from that group of people. Okay. Sometimes people refer to recruitment as bringing people in and getting them hired. No, it's not that. These are 2 distinct processes. Okay. So what is the primary advantage of conducting a virtual job fair for recruitment? Less expensive than traditional job fairs. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest ones. They allow for real-time in-person interactions. Well, if it's virtual, you're not going to be in person. They're more effective for local recruitment. Are they, versus a in-person job fair? No. They limit the pool of candidates. No, they do the exact opposite. They do not require any follow. They probably require even more follow. Okay, so there you go. How can a company best utilize social media for recruitment? Okay, so this is a cool idea. I like this. It's kind of like a newer trend, to be honest. So just like in the olden days when we were recruiting people in person, we go to certain locations, like I don't know. Say if you wanted to recruit people from an ethnic background, you would go to the grocery stores associated with, I don't know, ethnic foods. Right? A little stereotype, but like you would target like that kind of idea versus, so that's what we would do back then. But in social media, you kind of have like a similar idea. If you're trying to target like a younger generation, you would target certain forms of social media. If you want to target an older generation, you target other forms of social media or something along those lines. You can even be more specific in terms of targeting on social media certain demographics. Okay. So high level, that's how people use social media for recruitment. So let's dive into these options. So how can they best utilize this? By only posting job openings on the company's website. That's kind of, why would you do that? Why would you waste that opportunity to target certain demographics? By engaging potential candidates by showing the company culture. Do you really show company culture on social media? Yeah, I guess perhaps you can show what's going on, but I don't think that's the answer. Avoiding interaction with candidates. No, you want to maintain using social media solely for marketing purposes by restricting job advertisements. This word solely, this is this idea here by using social media solely for marketing. I don't think you do it solely for marketing purposes. You use it to attract people. By restricting, what is the answer here? By engaging fans and showing company culture. Oh, I guess I missed this front part. See, I made an error here. I'm immediately jumping to this idea of showcasing company culture. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you can do it on social media. But like this whole notion is that you're engaging with them early on. Okay, engage with them early on is key. Yeah, because this solely piece just means it's just for marketing. That's wrong. by restricting. Anytime, okay, so here's another note, is when you're going through things, and anytime I would use like a very harsh word, like solely, only, restricting, or something along those lines, it should be a red flag to you that something doesn't add up with that question. Okay? And maybe we should do what I did, what I didn't do is circle back. Hey, all of these answers, none of them really make sense. Let's circle back. Actually, on an exam, what I'd probably do is flag this question and move on to the next one. Hey, I don't know what this one is on a first pass. I'm going to look at this again at the end of the exam. Don't spend 10 minutes on one question. Go through them all, circle back, and then have a second look at it. All right. 416 Cannabis, a new dispensary in Toronto, is preparing for its grand opening. The store aims to provide high quality products and excellent customer service, which requires hiring knowledgeable and friendly staff. The HR team is tasked with developing a recruitment strategy. Okay, we're talking about recruitment here that attracts qualified candidates, not only well versed. Okay, we want people who are well versed in the products and compliant with federal regulations. Okay, so maybe there's two things that we're looking for with these people. As the store navigates the complexities of hiring in a regulated industry, it also wants to ensure diversity and inclusion in the recruitment process. Challenges to balance legal compliance, industry, and customer service excellence while building a better team. Okay, so it's this regulatory piece, knowledge, regulatory, and customer service is really what we're after. We want to hire somebody with these three things. Okay? Even though it says we wanted to attract people with these two up top, it says down here the three. Okay, what should be the primary focus of the recruitment strategy to ensure compliance? Okay, so there's other things that are important, but this question is specifically focusing on compliance. Offering salary doesn't really ensure compliance. Ensuring all candidates have prior retail experience, again, doesn't ensure that there's compliance with the cannabis industry. Verifying that candidates have necessary certifications and clear backgrounds. Possibly, right? Certifications related to, I'm guessing, some form of compliance, perhaps. Recruiting candidates from competitor stores. It's kind of like a cool one. You would assume that people, if you're working in the industry already, you are aware of federal regulations, but it doesn't always guarantee it. So I'm going to go with no. It's employee discounts. No, I don't think that's it. Okay, so my logic was correct. That's where I would go with. Okay, certificates and background checks. Yeah, there we go. Which aspect of the recruitment process is crucial for 416 Cannabis to highlight to attract top talent in a competitive market? Okay, so if we're wanting to attract top talent, okay, trying to attract top talent, that's what it's saying. Strict enforcement of workplace policies. If you're going to be strict in enforcing anything, you're probably going to limit your recruiter's ability to attract people. So I don't think so. Opportunities for career growth and professional. Yeah, that's going to excite people. Right? That's going to be good. I'm looking for something around money. Limit employee benefits and perks. No. High employee turnover rates. I don't know what the hell that has to do with recruitment. Minimal job requirements. No, you want to have maximum job requirements. Okay, so in this case, if you want to attract top talent, of these options, career growth, professional development, anything around money, anything around like post midterm, when we talk about attracting top talent, it's all about commission-based pay. The higher performers get paid more money. Yeah. Okay, so money. People are motivated by money. Another thing that could have worked here, if I talked about employee benefits, right, as a positive, you get more employee benefits, so it's not limited. You get enhanced employee benefits. That could work. You can smoke as much cannabis as you want. That kind of idea could have attracted more people. It would have attracted probably not the top talent, probably would have attracted the lower talent, but it still would have been effective at attracting people. Which recruitment method would best help attract knowledgeable candidates? Okay, so in this case, we're focusing on knowledge. Okay, the previous was like regulation, just attracting top performers. This is about knowledge. Okay. How do we attract people who we know are knowledgeable? Posting job fairs at local community centers, possibly partnering with, there we go. So this is like, it's possibly, but they're a community center, so like it's open to everybody. General job boards, again, it's helpful, right? Because it will attract people, but it's too general. It's not really like focusing on like this knowledge piece. Partnering with the with cannabis industry education programs, advertising national newspapers now often refer most to current employees. So this helps again. This one will help, but it's the idea that how do we know it's anything related to it knowledgeable, right? I think that's the key word here, right? Is this knowledgeable thing, and partnering with the industry education program is really anything is the only option that really speaks to this idea of knowledge in any way. And if you're partnering with an educational institute, I don't want to say a cannabis industry would partner with the university, but like some type of a training program, you would ensure that you're getting people that are aware of, that are skilled, right? Like in that vein. Okay. Selection. All right, the last chapter we're covering. Okay. Which of the following is a common method to reduce biases during the interview process? Okay. So the interview process. So are we talking about? Yeah. Okay. So we're the interview step in the selection process. How do you reduce bias? Conduct unstructured interviews. Unstructured interviews actually can increase bias on the interviewer. And an unstructured interview is where you have few questions, and based on the response, you're firing off different questions. So when you're comparing across interviewers, or I'm sorry, across interviewees, it's very difficult to compare across interviewee to interviewee because everybody has experienced a very different interview. Using a panel of diverse interviewers, yeah, that's a good one. One, you're using a panel, and two, they're diverse, right? They're more likely to have different perspectives. I kind of like that answer. Asking personal questions, no. As soon as you get personal, you're going to insert bias. Yeah, have an interview in like a super casual setting. That's not going to allow for any type of bias to be included. Relying solely. Hey, there we go. That notion, that word solely in there again. It's a big trigger. Hey, no, cross that line out. The word solely in there, restricted, only, limited, cross that line out instantly. Based on the textbook, which step in the selection process follows interviews? Ooh, okay, so this is one where you need to know the order of steps in a particular process. So let's see. Let's see. Well, we don't have. So the first step in the process was about the idea of receiving information, right? So you're receiving job applications and then you're receiving the interviews. The second step in the process was about applicant screening. So, hey, how can we use technology to filter out the most number of employees that we can? The next step was related to employment tests. Once we've filtered out people using technology based on what they've written, you need to test them to see whether they actually know what they say they know. The next step is actually the interviewing. Let's chat with these people, see how they are face to face or over a screen. The next piece is I think it's a realistic job preview. Yeah, it's a realistic job preview. And then realistic job preview is the idea that once you're interviewed, you have this realistic job preview to see whether you like the job. So I might send, if I'm the employer, I send you a video. Hey, this is what you can experience. This is what you could experience on a day-to-day with respect to the job. Or it's saying, hey, do you want to like shadow me for the day as I go about my work? Or do you want to have a quick conversation with a couple of junior employees to say, hey, what's your day-to-day like? Right? Give people an expectation of that. After that, there's some type of verification of references. Okay, I like you. Okay, so realistic job preview. You like the company. And then if you're passing past that, I know that I like you. I need to verify the references to make sure that I'm not missing something. I'm going to talk to previous employers, character references to make sure you're a good person. And then the last step is this medical assessment. Sometimes, like, if it's required, it's kind of like that final hurdle, sometimes referred to as a contingent assessment. They just want to make sure there's no drugs in your system or anything to the final flag that is going to prevent you from doing your job. And then the last is the hiring. So once we have all this information, typically a panel or committee comes together and they decide, of all the people that have gone through this process, who do we like and who do we not like. All right, the final case. Now, Paws and Whiskers. I don't like that name. A well-known pet store is expanding its operations and needs to hire additional staff to meet the growing demands. Okay. So if you're reading this immediately, you might think, okay, well, this might be an HR planning question. The store is looking for employees who are not only passionate about animals, okay, so passionate, but also have strong customer service. Okay, so there we go. Here's the two things we're looking for. Is responsible for designing a selection process. Okay, so here should be the cue. We're not talking about HR planning. We're talking about employee selection. That includes, so that's the screening, interviewing, skills assessment. There we go. So we're doing the skills assessment after the interview in this particular case. At least that's what it looks like. It's crucial to ensure that new hires are knowledgeable about pet care and can provide excellent advice to customers. So the customer advice, customer service, and then the passion, I suspect, knowledgeable, passion, they're kind of two different things, but the challenge is to develop a comprehensive selection process that identifies the best candidate who fits with the store's culture and requirements. So store's culture, right, and requirements, good. So there's a lot of going on here. What is the most important quality to look for during the interview process for? Okay, so there was two things that came up. Passion for animals, strong administrative skills. I don't think there was anything related to administration. Passion and customer service is what it looks like. Knowledge of store management software. So it's knowledge about pet care, not about store management software. I think it's just B, yeah. The others are throwing you off, right? These ABC people often are like ABC, oh, it's either, all of the above or some. Don't be fooled. Which selection method would best help in assessing a candidate's ability to positively interact? So how are we going to test people to make sure that we have the ability to have that customer service front? Conduct a personality test, possibly. It speaks to, are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? I don't think it's the best, but it could. Reviewing social media profiles, it could, if you're with like a bunch of people in pictures all the time, it could help, but it's really not going to tell you how you interact with people. Holding mock customer interaction scenarios. I like this a lot, to be honest. I think put people in scenarios. Let's do role playing. I love those ideas in interviews. It's going to be a lot better than one of the first two. Asking for a written essay on customer service. Yes. Okay. Give me a research report on customer service. What would you do? Have the next 4 hours to write a paper about this. Why wouldn't you ask somebody on the spot? Because when you're interacting with customers, you don't have time to react. You have to do it immediately. So that's really one as well. Physical endurance tests. Maybe if you're talking with the customers while running a marathon, then that might be required. But other than that, a mock customer interview test is the best. So here's another employment test. Would be most fitting for a selection of a salesperson. Oh, I like this one. Okay. So salespeople, what do salespeople want to know? Okay. So in order to excel in sales are interacting with people. Sales are being able to know yourself, to know others. It's about, it's emotional intelligence is what it is, right? It's not like how smart, what's your IQ? If you're a higher IQ, it doesn't mean you're necessarily a better salesperson. Personality, this one could be close, and I think that fools a lot of people because it's saying like, oh, extroverts are better salespeople. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think oftentimes that's true, but even introverts can be good at selling things to people if they if they know themselves and they know others, and they can read the cues with others. So that's not it. Substance abuse testing. Are you on drugs? No. Okay, you're a good salesperson. No. Physical exam again, unless you're running a marathon when selling, that's probably irrelevant. Emotional intelligence is all about understanding emotions, your emotions, the other people around you's emotions. So it's the idea that if you can assess and read real quickly the emotions belonging to the other person in your own, you can judge and adjust and adapt your strategy for selling based on that. So knowing that is probably going to help you be a very good salesperson. I think that's it. That is it, guys. I hope you found this useful. Again, this exam entirely multiple choice, just like this review. Chapters 2 through 6. There's going to be 10 questions per chapter, so 10 times 5, 50 questions of the boring standard questions like these. And then there's going to be 5 mini case questions like this. Okay, so it would be like 50 questions plus these 5, and each one of these is 3. So 15, 10, 50 plus 15 is your 65 questions. That's going to be the exam. You have 2 hours. I'm looking forward to it. Best of luck studying and take care. All right. Bye-bye, guys.